Hello everybody, this is Teferi again with another Zoo video. This time we are playing new updated list, post 1, and this is very soon to be considered a stock list. I'm now making, as we speak, I'm making sideboard guide for this exact list. This is post 1 tested and played by a lot of players. I got their feedback, I tested myself. Post 1, my total score with this deck, with this list, is 18 wins and 2 losses. For those 2 losses, one was my punt because I was AFK for some time, and then when I returned to my comp, I forgot what was happening, so I punted. But it really could have been at 19-1, and I almost evened my best score ever with a deck when I first created the zoo list with Nishoba. Had a 19-1. It was pretty good run, but this run was also very nice. Last time I played the deck, you saw all of it in the video. I had a 9-1 score, and now I repeated today again with a 9-1, so total 18-2. Pretty good, pretty good. I think not a lot of decks in Modern are capable of doing this score, of maintaining this crazy win rate, and just all the time. You also go very quickly through those leagues, and it's like 2.5, 3 hours to play like 10 matches. Usually, sometimes more if your opponents are slower. But in 3 hours, you can play 2 leagues. 3 hours, you can play 2 leagues, do 9-1. So that's pretty good. So we have some changes to the sideboard. I talked about that last time. Flame Slash was there uh, because I needed additional removal on the sideboard. I wanted that removal to target especially Scam, but also to be able to bring it in instead of Bolt when playing against Amulet Titan, and also bring it in against various aggro strategies that are popular right now, like Death and Texas. Just change Flame Slash was a really good answer in that matchup, which is usually not the easiest one for Zoo. And Flame Slash just kills all the creatures for 1 red mana. It's pretty good, but Chain to the Rocks is not bad either. It's not great against Death and Texas specifically because they can target the land with the Ghost Quarter, but it's very good in other matchups. Okay, by now I have already said that I settled my mind on 2 minor missteps in the main and 1 Migloz main, and which I think is better than 4th Nishoba Brawler or 2nd Dromoka and 1 Dromoka in the main, which is still a very good inclusion. And I think first Dromoka is better than a 3rd misstep. They do partially same job. They protect our creatures against unholy heats, lightning bolts, but Dromoka also does other stuff, and it can deal with Fable, it can deal with Leyline Binding, it can be sometimes complete blowout for your opponents. It can put counter on creatures, protecting them from damage from various stuff, really. So that's it. Okay, so Chain to the Rocks isn't the only change from the last time. I really want the Tear Asunder was very good in a lot of matchups, and Tear Asunder is a card I want when playing against Blood Moon. Tear Asunder is a great card to bring in against Murktide. It's 2 mana, deals with the Blood Moon, it deals with Kaldra, which is very much played in the Hammertime, which is a very popular deck, and the other Stoneforge decks too. So Tear Asunder is 2 mana, exile, enchantment, so it's even good against Urza Saga. You exile it, they can't bring it back to their hand with Wrenn and 6. Stuff like that. It's really useful. Exile is pretty important, but it's not just that. For 2 mana, for 4 mana, you can, if you pay the kicker cost, you can exile any permanent. It can kill a Murktide, Ledger Shredder, or whatever. So it's a really good card to have. It's not just that if they don't have the Blood Moon, but it's also alive in that cases too. It can be used for other stuff, and it's really a versatile card and a card we really want in our sideboard. So I put the second one instead of the first Dromoka, as the second Dromoka wasn't that important anymore because we already had two minor missteps in the main for decks we want to hate the Unholy Heat with. So that was a good change in my opinion. And other than that, we were still playing, of course, two Rest in Peace. The Rest in Peace is the best graveyard hate sideboard card in the Magic. Of course, the Leyline of the Void is better, specifically against black red scam deck. But we we uh, we have other cards that are good in that matchup, and we there's no need to specifically target that matchup with this card. It's already a pretty decent matchup. And Chain to the Rocks is a card I brought into the sideboard to specifically target Ragdos Scum. For 1 mana, you can exile any creature they have, any there's a 1 mana answer for their scammed turn 1 Fury, for their scammed turn 1 Grief. It will be great top deck in any part of the game. Um, they don't have a solution to deal with it, so it will be very good in that matchup. It's also very usable in a lot of other matchups, like for example blue red murktide deck and all the easy decks really, so they don't really have a solution for Chain to the Rocks. It's good against all decks not playing prismatic ending, and they don't have a solution for it. Even if they play prismatic ending, it's still a fine choice in some matchups. Okay, so we of course have Flusterstorms. Flusterstorms are great additional 1 mana counter spells, and for some matchups it's really usable. And when we bring it in, for example against Cascade decks, we have 8 1 mana counter spells, plus Rest in Peace, plus the Fairy. So we become a very difficult deck for them to deal with, and with the 8 1 mana counter spells, that matchup becomes very easy for Zoo, and Cascade will always be present in any metagame, and I think that's really important. Okay, as I already mentioned, two Tear Asunders on the sideboard. Tear Asunder, for this exact version, Tear Asunder is, in my opinion, best Blood Moon hate you can play, because it's specifically good against a Scam deck and Murktide deck. So, Natural State, 1 mana, best artifact enchantment removal in the game. It's for 1 mana. It destroys any artifact, any enchantment which is relevant to us, because it says convert mana cost value 3 or less, and that targets all important artifacts, enchantments we care about in the modern format. Okay, so what card doesn't it target? It's Leyline Binding, but we don't want Natural State in Leyline Binding matchups. You will never bring in Natural State in Leyline Binding matchup. There's just no point of bringing it in, and it's all other cards are better than Natural State. So it doesn't matter that it doesn't kill Leyline Binding, because we don't want it against Leyline Binding decks anyway. So it's really not important. In the matchups where we want it, it kills everything for 1 mana. So it's Verter is much worse for this deck, except for in metagames where Domain Zoo is very popular, because Verter is very good card against this specific deck. Will always have either Leyline Binding or Sign of Draco in hand, and it's versatile card that for 1 mana or 2 mana can kill either of those, um, or both, maybe in some cases. And that's the only case. That's the only reason why in some Vines, in previous videos of Domain Zoo, I had Verters in my sideboard. Other than that, Natural State is a much better option, and it kills for 1 mana turn 1, turn 1 Urza Saga, turn 1 Amulet, turn 1 Colossus Hammer, Springleaf Drum, whatever. So it's the best and by far the best for artifact enchantment deck for hate for this deck against those kind of decks. Against other kind of decks, as I already explained, you don't want natural states anyway, so you will be able to use your Tear Asunders. So natural state and Tear Asunders are not for the same matchups, but in some matchups, of course, you bring in both like Hammertime. You'll bring both Tear Asunder and Natural State, because Tear Asunder can get rid of Kaldra, but it's also 2 mana enchantment for removal for half of their deck, so it's always good. Other than that, in comparison from the last versions, we cut, there were previously mostly 2 Wheel of Summers or 2 Mystical Disputes in the sideboards. We now just have 1. I think in the as you could see in my previous sideboard guide that I made, mostly on Wheel of Summer is much worse card when you're playing on the draw. So when you're playing on the draw, it's very hard to use Wheel of Summer efficiently because you really have to play your stuff and just often can't hold that 1 mana for Wheel of Summer, and just by default, this Wheel of Summer becomes much worse card on the draw. And the Veil of Summer is specifically good against red black scam deck. But if you're playing on the draw, they have the scam grief while you're on no lands in play, and they remove creature from your hand, and they remove removal from your hand, and then you're stuck with a Wheel of Summer in hand that doesn't do anything, and it's useless. So it's not really that good. It's still a card you will bring in from your sideboard, but it's not that good when you're playing on the draw. Chained to the Rocks is a specific good answer. You will want to top deck at these situations, and you will want to have multiple removals in your hand, so when they grief you, they can't remove all of your removals, or you have a higher chance of top decking one. So when they grief you turn 1 and you just play a land, kill their grief, it's a much easier game for you. You can relax, fetch some basics, be sure you're safe to play around Blood Moon. You bring in additional Blood Moon hate, so you're really doing fine. But if you're able to, and the Chain to the Rocks is additional 1 mana removal, we already have a lot of them. Leyland Bindings, Bolt, Tribal Flames, and now Chain to the Rocks, a lot of answers. So I really needed a Chain to the Rocks in a lot of matchups where Stubborn Denial was bad. I just didn't have a card on my sideboard that would be good to bring in. So there was a time I played a lot of aggro matchups in a row, and I just wanted to get rid of my Stubborn Denials each game, but I just didn't have a card in my sideboard that I could bring in, and the Chain to the Rocks tied it up together, and it fits perfectly with these Magra matchups. You just lose the denials from the main, bring in a Chain to the Rocks, often one Teferi, and maybe one Tear Asunder if they're playing Ether Wilds, or and stuff like that, because Tear Asunder can still kill anything for 4 mana. Okay, so that's it. That's it. That's partially it. So everything else is the same from the last list. Um, One Teferi. I think these 2 slots are kind of this deck flex slots in the sideboard. Veil can be good. Veil is very good against Junt. Veil is very good against Grixis, and it's very good against Red Black Scam, and it's good against Blue White Control. Other than that, if you don't have that in your meta game, you really don't need it. You can be better off playing maybe Mystical Disputes if you're facing 4-color Omnath decks, or just playing Heartbringers, stuff like that. Teferi is a very usable card in a huge amount of matchups. So Teferi, when you're playing on the play, it's good against Murktide. It's good against Blue-Red Scam. If you play this actually turn 3 and plus it, if you already dealt with their early creatures, they can really play Moon because you have the Fairy on 5 and you just bounce it and play like normal and save the counter spell for the next turn. So it shuts off their Undying spells. They play a lot of them, usually around 7, 8. Sometimes 6, but it shuts off a lot of the cards, and it's often very good against all ephemerate decks. It shuts off the ephemerate rebound and ability to play it as an instant, which is of course very good. And Teferi can be good against Urza Saga decks where you can bounce the big constructs. It can be pretty relevant. It can shut off the Black Myth skills from Hammertime, Spell Pierces. They play a lot of protection these days. And so that's it. These are very good cards that I would always include in the open meta game. Of course, you can do some changes to the sideboard for if you're playing at your LGS and you know what decks are your opponent playing. But for open meta game, I think at this moment this is the best possible main board and sideboard. And I will be making my sideboard guide for this exact list. So that's it. We talked about everything in the last, everything else in the last videos about Migloz. Migloz is great. Um, in a lot of games, it's very usable. In those that it's not, you can. It's also always good, but sometimes you just have a better. Of course, you won't play Migloz if you have territorial Kavu in hand. And but when you're out of threats, I really always want to top deck Migloz. Migloz is a very good threat, having a lot of these relevant abilities which prove to be a lot better than it looks just in the text. And there were some arguments about playing a second Miglos instead of one Dromoka. I think this is the only argument that I agree with this deck, and second Miglos would also be pretty good instead of first Dromoka, but Dromoka is also a very usable card, and it's very hard to distinguish which card is better in the open meta game. They are both are really good, and I really like them as a one-off. I played, of course, tested with the two Miglos. It just happened too much for me that I had very often both of them in situations where I didn't want to have both, and playing this as one-off just always felt very good. I was always happy to see it when I draw it. Never said it was always done its job good. Sometimes gaining menace, vigilance, it was important for opponents not being able to attack me. Sometimes even pumping Miglos for 4 in the turn, being able uh, to attack for 8 was also very relevant. And of course, this 3 mana ability, mostly destroying opponents' leyline bindings, was very relevant in control matchups. And Dromoka, on the other hand, did the same job, did a similar job to Minor Missteps, but not just that. She Jomoka was the reason why it was a very good card in a lot of matchups. Uh, Helped me dealing with the Leyland bindings, fables. Also in the aggro matchups, it's not a completely dead card like Stubborn Denial can be, or sometimes Minor Misstep, because it can always put a counter on a creature and to do a combat trick and fight another creature. It's very good against those decks that don't really play almost any removal. So it's always useful, and it's especially good when played against mirror, against your opponents playing Zoo, and against murktide deck when you can counter heat with it and fight with your creatures and do just incredible blowouts, and also against any deck really playing bolt and unholy heat, it can often be very huge blowout, and it does a lot of important job for this deck. So it was hard choosing between second Miglos and first Jomoka, but I kind of prefer this split. I don't say it's wrong to play two Miglos instead, but I really Jomoka has done a lot for me so far, so I prefer the split. Okay, that's it. This part is over. We are now going to go through some matches. We are going to go to watch the entire 9-1 run I had in this last run. Last time I played the deck, as I already said, I've already also done a 9-1, so 18-2. It's a pretty incredible score for any deck. And my only loss was to Magic 8, who played the mono white, and I was AFKing in the match 3. So I didn't see, I was in the bathroom and I didn't see he revealed actually Chancellor of the Annex. So I got my first spell countered and it was game deciding. Okay, so first match from this round was against Amulet Titan opponent. I have 2 matches against Amulet in this 9-1 run, and this time opponent just kept a bad hand. Okay, of course, a Grazer turn 1, Dryad turn 2 is not bad. They're already on 4 mana, but no Amulet is always weaker than when they have Amulet, of course. I was just able to play my Nacatl and the Dryad. Nacatl is a great card for this matchup. It's very important to have her on a turn 1. It attacks very good through Grazer. And I was able to play both Binding and Nacatl on the same turn. Okay, so my opponent's on 6 mana. They have 1 land in hand I know about and 1 mysterious card. So I can now start putting my creatures on the field, start attacking, and hold the Leyline Binding for their Primeval Titan. Of course, they go for Besage, so Binding is not great in this situation. So I didn't even use it. I just didn't want. I didn't want for them to Besage you my binding with the Titan below. So I just played Dromoka, made them sack Tear the Saga, and fight Nacatl with the Titan, and then finish the Titan with Lightning Bolt. Now they play the land they had in hand, and I was able to haste my Ragavan, hit them for 7. So I have this way I have a lethal. Next turn I don't need to play my Scion. I can hold my binding exactly for this kind of situation if they try to go Amulet Titan, and I had the Leyline binding in hand in case they try to do this, but they didn't have a Titan, so I just attacked and finished them off with my Lightning Bolt. I had a second binding to exile the Dryad before, and I knew they had Sage in hand, so this was planned. I had a second Leyline binding to exile the Dryad before the blocks, so I was able to easily win this game 1. Actually, Leyline bindings were really cool, really good against them, and helped me win. And this card is not usually that good against them, but it served. It served well in this time. Okay, so again they started Grazer. I start a lot slower. Sorry, I found the Nacatl, which was pretty good, pretty important for the tempo. They were not the fastest again. Just tapped Valakut on turn 2. Pretty good news for me. So I was able to just start attacking with my Nacatl. Nacatl is very good. It attacks through the Grazer, which is not the case with the Ragavan. They go for the Azusa, And the Azusa is really not a card we care about in this matchup. We can respond to these them playing lands. So they already played the lands. Azusa already done their job, and there's really no point in dealing with Azusa anymore. Once they play it, they do the stuff with it, and it's over. Yeah, so no point in dealing with Azusa. I played. I wanted them to use my. Wanted them to use the procedure rather on Scion than on Leyline Binding, so I can hold the Leyline Binding in case they play the Titan or Amulet or whatever. In this case, when on the draw, I sometimes they can have these crazy hands with a lot of amulets, Mycosid Guardians, copying amulets, and that's why I brought one Hidetsugu. I drew it. It wasn't really necessary, but in some cases it's good. So that was it. Um, that was my opponent concedes after it probably didn't draw anything, and that was the first match against Amulet Titan. Went pretty smoothly. Okay, so now off to match two. Okay, playing a second. Playing second, I didn't know what I was playing against. I didn't want to play 1-1 and Nacatl. Had a feeling they could maybe play Vren. So I just wanted to hold my Stubborn Denials, Missteps. But once they fetched for Ziatora, I knew that the creativity. Okay, so holding the denial is still very good in this position. So I was able to fetch for the Sacred Foundry, attack with Nacatl. I didn't want to fetch on their turn, and this way they can go Fire Ice. You need to hold your fetch, not waste it. If you can go try to fetch before, then they Fire Ice your land and do the creativity thing. So it's a thing you got to be careful of. So this was a pretty good situation for me. I was able to attack with Nishobas, and they go for removal. I have two counter spells, so I can use one, but I really can't use the another. I need to hold this. I need to hold this card in case they go for the creativity on their turn. I'm still not completely safe, of course, if they have their spell pierce or something, but I have to let this bolt resolve because I have to hold a stubborn denial for the creativity. So um, I just attack with my Wild Nacatl, play the Migloz, which will seal the game next turn, while holding two counter spells in hand. And that was it. My opponent concedes. That was game one for creativity. Creativity is usually one of the best matchups for the Zoo. It's the easiest matchup. Uh, I I know that I only lost, I think maybe once or twice in my life against creativity with this deck. You got to play smart when you're playing against it, but they are so unfairable. Sometimes some mistakes, even you get there even with making some mistakes. So it's really important to go for the Temple Garden. If I went for Breeding Pool, my opponent would ping my Nacatl, and I would be in a terrible position. So this is the example of how you can lose to creativity. At this point, I have two turns to uh, try to find something. I need a top deck. So I just play my Scion and bluff here. So in this case, if I give my Wild Nacatl trample, I don't play Ragavan. So because if I play Ragavan, they will this is how I bluff having the 1 mana counter spell. So they'll maybe play the things differently. They have the binding, they have the bolt, pretty good for them, but I have the bolt from the top of my deck to finish this game, and that's it. Okay, that were very quick games against creativity like usual. No problem for Zoo. You just have to play the things right. Don't mess up at any point. If you mess up, it can seem as a pretty bad matchup. Okay, so unfortunately having the Zagotrium in this situation makes me unable to cast my Wild Nacatl on turn 1. This was, I think it was the Omnath, Omnath deck. So Omnath decks mostly play Prismatic Ending, so playing Scion is a bit better, but it's not, they don't play a lot of these endings, mostly like 2, so I think playing either was fine. Okay, they just bounce the bounce the Scion again, and then I was able to play 2 of my creatures on the same turn. Having 3 counter spells in hand, I was really hoping to succeed to kill the Teferi the next turn, but it finally happened. Finally, or not, yeah, not. But they sacrificed their endurance to save the Teferi, which was okay for me. I was able to play the binding, and I think it was best at this point to not play Kawu here because I really needed to hold all these counter spells. I had 3 counter spells available. I could go for Breeding Pool with this, so holding all 3. Also holding Dromoka command in case they play Omnath. I can put counter on my Scion and kill it. So I have a solution for everything. So there was no point in playing Kawu last turn. I think it was better to just play it safely. I have a very good threat on the field. Now I play my Kawu. If they kill both, I still have Ragavan in hand holding the denial. If they have like Solitude, Fury, they have it, it's fine. But I stumbled denial there ending, and that was it. Game didn't go well in the start for me, but I had very good hands and still finished the game with 2 very good cards in hand. Just my cards were better than my opponent's cards. They just played some Teferis, Endurances, Prismatic Endings, out of Nisas, nothing special, while my spells were Kavu, Scion, Ragavan, Leyland Binding, Stubborn Denial, so all my spells are all better than theirs, and you can easily beat them in the longer game too. This is like medium, turn 7, turn 8 win, but I was able to play even longer games against it and still win. Of course, at this point, them having like you're weaker against ephemerate versions, which play Solitude Ephemerate, Fury Ephemerate, with a lot of stuff. They already have like the Fairy can be a problem when on the draw, like you saw in this case. And in that case, if they have Solitude then Ephemerate, it can really be a big blowout, but it's usually okay matchup, and it's mostly better to draw to draw spells than a lot of creatures. This time I didn't have any burn spells, but still was able to win this. So off to the second match, second game against Omnath Midrange, Omnath Pile, whatever it's called these days. So decent start, but I really don't want to play my Ragavan into them Brennan 6, so this is really important. As you can see, that's exactly what would happen if I played my Ragavan. So you can I think I had a lot of matches in this league, which are really good examples of how to play against certain matchups like this one. You don't play Ragavan on turn 1 on the draw because it will get pinged by Wren, and then you'll have to use a spell to get rid of the Wren. And but in most games you can just forget about Wren and don't really care about it. And when it becomes a removal and then a threat, it's really problematic. So I was able to stubborn denial, then Wren instead of letting them kill my Ragavan with it. So at this situation, They were stuck on lands, and I was able to play turn 2 territorial Kavu while still having an option to play Dash Ragavan. They now must answer my Kavu, and now I'm able to just Dash Ragavan. Unfortunately, didn't have a second threat. At this point, if I had a second threat, it would be very good, but I couldn't maintain the pressure, so I just put the Gigante to hand. A lot of removals here. My opponent goes for the Teferi again. They just minus it to draw a card, and I play my Giganta. If you have nothing, Giganta is not a threat. Giganta can win a lot of matchups. So this is really important. People ditching the Giganta. I was playing. I was counting on them having the ephemerate. Uh, I really wanted to hold the tribal flames in my hand to finish them off, and I knew that when they left the white mana open, you always have to count of them having the ephemerate. It would be really bad if they resolved it, so I needed two burn spells to deal with it, which was fine. I played my Sign of Draco. I now have a kill next turn if they don't do anything. They do something, they play the Omnath, they don't have a land, which was very good for me. They let 4 damage through, so there's no point in aiming face, so I just killed the Omnath, hoping for a burn top deck to finish things up next turn. But instead, they go for a double Teferi, so Teferi bouncing my binding below, which was second Teferi, then bouncing my Sign of Draco. Really good for them. At this point, I just needed to deal with this Teferi first. It's it's much more important to deal Teferi than with the 3/2 lifelinker. I'm still on 20 lives, so I'm not in any danger of dying soon from the damage. And I really want my Stubborn Nihilist to work if I draw another creature, and that's exactly what happened. I played my Sino Draco, and now I just need a removal. I'm holding Stubborn Denial all this time. Well, Elish Norn was definitely a problem, but the Sino Draco beats Elish Norn anytime. Luckily, I already played most of my Leyland bindings, so I didn't really care for this Elish Norn a lot. I still just wanted to protect my Scion, and I had my Stubborn Denial. They weren't able to draw the solution for it in these 2 games. Another Solitude would probably win the game for them, but they didn't have it. They already wasted. They already used 3. They already used 3 Solitudes, so it was very low chance of them having the 4th Solitude. And that was a win against Omnath deck, and that's how you play on the draw against a Wrenn and 6 deck, so don't forget that. It's really important. You will lose games. You will lose games if you play things differently. Okay, so time for match 4. Okay, so I'll just pause for a second. Okay, this was match number 4. Played against Hammertime. I think in these 2 leagues I played all relevant matchups in the current modern, except maybe for Murktide. I think I didn't see Murktide, but I played like against very often matchups for Zoo and all the bad ones. Okay, so in this situation, I have a lot of lands in hand, so ditching some of the lands, playing my attacking with Kavu, casting my Scion, maintaining the pressure. It's really hard situation for my opponent. When I have the unblockable Scion of Draco, will stop holding Stubborn Denial. They find the Shadow Spear. Drawing another land was not ideal, but I still had a loot with Kavu. So I fetch first, attack with both, loot the land away definitely. I find the Leyland Binding, which is of course always decent. My opponent decides to let 8 damage through. So I kind of just needed to live one more turn to finish them off because I was holding Stubborn Denial and Binding, so I have answers for almost anything they play, and they have limited mana. I would let them draw 2 cards, but it wouldn't matter, so they concede. Sorry. Um, okay, that was game 1 against the Hammer. They didn't have a really strong hand. Okay, so I have a new cyber plan against Hammertime. It worked pretty well for me. I decided to get rid of all the 1-drops, all 4 Nacatls, all the Ragavans, and 1 Stubborn Denials because just my cards from sideboard were so good. It seemed like a pity to not board in all of them, and I'm had a very good score so far against Hammer, 3-0 with this new plan against it. So they played Stone. They played. Sorry, I kind of riskier a bit. I decided to. They were obviously planning on going for Kadra, and it was a bit risky to do this because if they have the blacksmith skill, they can protect the saga and then play the Kadra. But if they don't, they just lose a land, don't get another mana this turn, so they can just play Kadra and nothing else. And it sounded right for me, so I went for it, but it ended up not being very good. It would end up better if I just let them do something, play the Kadra, get Here's the Saga, then try Binding. They will probably protect it with the Blacksmith skill in combat. Then on my turn, I will be able to play the Tear Asunder on Urza Saga and the second Leyline Binding on to get rid of Kadra. But it was fine. It was fine anyway. They protected the Saga, lost skill from their hand, and I was still able to deal with Kadra, but not Saga, unfortunately. Uh, on the second way, I will be able to kill Saga too and be in much better position. But it is what it is. I find Teferi was good here because I counted on Teferi to bounce their construct token blocker for the next turn. But it was a very close game, very close. They had another saga. Fortunately, had a denial for their Teferi. Their Teferi would seal the game here. Denial was very important, and I let them go to attack phase. So they were on 11 life. So I just wanted to get rid of the Shadow Spear, not the token, because I had the Fairy to deal with token. So just go. I just go for the Fairy bounce the construct. They don't have lethal with their creatures on the field, which means they need something. And they really draw well. They had Cigar the Aid plus Colossus Hammer as their last 2 cards, but I guess I just drew better this game. I played Binding, uh, exiled their Sentinel. I let them draw a card, but it didn't matter. I had the Fairy on the field, so they weren't able to do anything in response. So mm, I drew my draws were also I can't blame my draws. But draws were very good. Had the Fairy plus double Tribal Flames from top of my deck. I think I would win this either way with any good card from the top, but this has just made it too easy for me. And that was it. That was a win against Hammer Time. So now it was time to play my first trophy match, and my opponent was Magic 8. The games were very cool. But in the third match, I was AFK for a brief moment, and I just didn't see them revealing the Chancellor of the Annex from their starting hand, game 3. So you will see what happened. It worked out very bad for me. I got my Scion countered on turn 2, which was game defining because they had Sanctifiers later, which just Scion beats, and it doesn't matter much. Okay, so he was on the mono white humans deck. Had a very good clock with very good hand, very good clock with my creatures. So the opponent already on 9 life. Have Tribal Flames in hand 3, very strong creatures. Here still holding the Leyline Binding in case I need it, but they don't have a good attack here. So I don't play the Leyline Binding on their turn. And I had multiple options here. I thought about it. I saw the deck, but I really didn't know this deck is playing. I saw the deck, didn't saw it entirely, but I didn't know this deck is playing this Shining Shoal card, which was very good against Zoo. He had a Shining Shoal to live on 1 life, so I kind of risked attacks with both. They have to jump both of my guys, and they leave with Adeline, so I'm hoping for them not have the removal and enough creature. I had counted they probably don't have enough mana to play to kill my creature and have enough damage with their creatures. That they had a really good hand here, but I had better in game 1, so I was able to remove their Adeline, dash my Ragavan, and go in for lethal. Okay, so very cool game. Very cool game 1. So all the games were very cool, just except for the third one when I misplayed. It wasn't really a misplay. I just didn't really see my opponent revealing the Chancellor of Annex. I just wasn't there at the moment when this happened. Okay, so really wanted to try to kill this champion of the parish with a bolt at the end of turn. So they revealed a Chancellor. They revealed the Chancellor, so I wasn't able to play anything. It would just get countered. But with the Refine Informant, they discarded Champion of the Parish. This means that they have that Shining Shoal card in hand, because there is no other reason why they wouldn't discard the Chancellor. It's useless in the hand. I just wanted to not any of my spells to get countered, so I just played Bolt, risked them playing the shoal, but that was kind of fine if they play the shoal here, but they just let it die. I don't know what their hand was exactly, but this really helped me a lot. Okay, so I just wanted to protect myself, playing 2 of the creatures at a time, so I was able to play both Scion and Nacatl to protect myself against further attacks because I was already on 10 life. And I was able to trade with their Refine Informant, and again play 2 creatures on the following turn. They were still holding the, I think, that card Shining Shoal in hand at this point. So they decided to sack their Burnton, and I knew they had the Shining Shoal in hand at this point, and they had the Cutter Commando. So if they would if I would attack with my creature at this point, they would play the Shining Shoal, 5 damage to my face. Then maybe on their turn, kill Migloz with something. and attack me for 5 with Cutter Command and Mutavolt, which would be exactly lethal. I'm not that familiar with their decks, so I wasn't sure if they are able to kill Migloz. But I was pretty sure the Shining Shoal is the last card in the hand with Chancellor. And next turn I was thinking about attacking. I was about to attack because I was able to play 2 creatures as blockers to attack with both, but I was thinking about pumping Migloz or not. I was sure they're going to play in the Shining Shoal, but I kind of wanted them to get rid of the Shoal. At this point, I have 2 creatures to block their creatures, so I'm good on their attacker phase. And if I let these trade, they can also just Shining Shoal this one. I still, in the retrospective, I should have not done it, obviously. I think this was the only time I kind of failed with gameplay in these leagues, but it was against a deck that I'm really not familiar with. Okay, they go. This was really funny. They go Shining Shoal on my Ragavan, so I actually do damage to myself and exile Territorial Cowl from my deck. And I play my Territorial Cowl from deck and the other one from hand. And my opponent got a perfect top deck from top of their deck to play the third Shining Shoal to kill me with Mutavolt. And that was it. Okay, pretty crazy game. And unfortunately, in match 3, I was AFK for this brief moment when Chancellor of the Annex entered the reveal card zone. Just didn't see it. Really didn't see it. I was just away from the room for a few seconds, and it really got me. Okay, so I went for the trial. Of course, find the Sacred Foundry, and now instead of playing Bolt or any removal on Esper Sentinel, I play my Sign of Jacob, which then dies. It was really bad, really bad. It would be a completely different game if I just played the Bolt here, any removal, let them draw that one card, and then play the Chain to the Rocks, and Sign of Jacob next turn, have 4 damage in the air. Just incredible difference, so a very big fail. Okay, they play another Sanctifier, but I had the Leyline Binding to deal with it, so I was okay. Draw the cow for turn was very good, so I played the cow. So I was still in a very good position. I was in a winning position, definitely. Attacking with the Territorial Cow with 2 good cards in hand is always kind of nice. I expected for my opponent um, to kill the Leyline Binding. They would definitely play something on their turn if they weren't holding for the Cutter Commando, but I really wanted to do the loot. I find that maybe this was also not very good. Not very good because actually Ragavan would have helped me. Just playing Ragavan, not discarding, would have helped me better than Teferi. In this case, so yeah, my opponent had they were left with the Chancellor in the hand, so Talia was very good top deck for them. Still, I stabilized, was able to kill the Esper Sentinel, leave my Territorial Cavu in blockers. They attack with everything. I block the biggest one. And now I untap with Teferi and the Sign of Draco. So at this point in a winning position, but on 1 life, and my opponent had the Shining Shoal, I think Shining Shoal again. Yeah, they had Shining Shoal again to seal the win. No, sorry, not a Shining Shoal this time, but Adelina's token. So if I just played the Scion of Draco, on turn 3 and killing the Esper Sentinel, this game would be over a long time ago. Sino Draco would deal more than 20 damage. So, yeah, kind of unfortunate that I just left the game at the point where my opponent was revealing Chancellor of Annex. I didn't see it, but games were cool nevertheless. And now we are going off to the second league, which was Trophy League of this 5-0 of this 9-1 run, and the loss to Magic Aids was the only one. Only loss in this run, and again playing against, I think, Hammertime. Playing first, much easier here. I have time to play my threat first and then hold the interaction for the later turns. I'm pretty safe with the Leyland Binding in hand. I can just safely play my Nishoba Brawler and don't fear of anything they put on field. So I just start doing damage. They go for the Shadow Spear. They don't want to let this resolve. I'll let them draw a card here with Desper Sentinel, but I kill a Giver and Paladin in response. And then Stubborn Denial the Shadow Spear. I think Stubborn Denial the Shadow Spear is really important in this matchup. Yeah, I can't just let them attack me with Shadow Spear. It will definitely lose me games. And I was in a cool position right now. Still had two Nishoba's Brawler, very difficult for them to deal with. Trample, it's really hard, and still holding the Binding Denial in case they try to do something. Top deck the Bolt. I go for the Leyland Binding. Leave the mana open for... Sorry, I didn't leave the mana. It wasn't necessary because I have 8 trample damage, so it's not important. They don't have mana open. So that was it. That was a game 1 against Hammer in the second league. Okay. Okay, I've had okay hand, nothing brutal, nothing special. Unfortunately, I uh, I should have left fetch in my hand instead of some other card. This way, I will be able to play Scion on turn 2. But anyway, it wasn't that important because I wasn't able to do this anyway because I needed to kill the Stoneforge, and I decided this is the best way. So next turn, I'm able to play the Scion, hold the Stubborn Denial, which is very good against Hammertime. Another draw into another land, far from ideal. I was holding Stubborn Denial, but it's Stubborn Denial giving them the card in case I need to use it. And 4-4 constructs were not easy to deal with at this point. I decided just to trade with one of them. I have the Stubborn Denial in case they try to go skill. I find the second threat, which was pretty good, so I was still in okayish position, but they had 6 cards in hand, which is not bad really. I had Stubborn Denial for Hammer, but my opponent had exactly the mana. Exactly the amount of mana they needed to be able to play all their cards, so not mana screwed, have exactly how they need, and 5 cards in hand is just a lot. So still good, attacking for 5, Tribal Flames, their Paladin seemed as I'm pretty safe at this point, but they had another Paladin plus another land to play the Colossus Hammer same turn, and that was it, game 2 against Hammer. They just had it all this game, but game 3 playing on the play is much better. Had to mulligan the first hand and the second one, so keeping 5 cards. But 5 decent cards, Stubborn Denial with Sign of Draco, and is very helpful, and Bolt 2, of course. So when playing on the play, it's much easier because you are able to just jam the Scion on turn 2, and when you do this, now they have a clock. and it's pretty good clock. 4 damage in the air constantly. So you just draw these interaction spells and try to not to fail in any of the decisions for the rest of the game. Should be enough to just kind of win. Them going on the slow Urza Saga plan is actually kind of good for me. I drew into natural state here, which was very good. Like one of the best draws I could have. So when they tap for construct, I just destroy the saga. Still hold the binding for their turn if necessary. Okay, they go for the Nettle Cyst, and I decide to binding the Nettle Cyst at this point, which I think it wasn't really necessary. It was not good play. I just didn't want to give them a chance to try to raise me, but that wouldn't be possible anyway. So I don't think this was a good decision. I think it was a bad decision. I just needed to hold the Leyland binding for something else because I had a very good clock with the Scion. Two counter spells in hand and 2 more turns to kill them. Actually, top deck Tribal Flames helped killing them on the same turn. And I've wasted my Leyland binding, so if they got to untap and get a Shadow Spear, it will obviously be a problem. So I really needed a top deck because of that. But it was fine. It was fine. Okay. Uh, that was a Hammertime matchup. Okay, so on to the next match. This is match 2 from the second league, and I'm playing second. This was Affinity matchup, and that this match is really good. I think very important for all of you to see it. Even the Affinity players playing Nettlecist in their deck should never play the Ornithopter on turn 1. You have to play Ornithopter when you untap, then play your second land, then play the Ornithopter, and then take mana with your Moonsnare prototype to cast your 3 mana spell. This wasn't the case because my opponent obviously not playing that, but Patchwork Automaton. But yeah, this is the common mistake a lot of players do, so that's why I mentioned it. That's why I used Bolt on turn 1 to immediately get rid of the Ornithopter, not letting them access to 3 mana on turn 2. This was a really hard game for me. I attack with Cow here, try to find another land, really need it at this point. So try to check the opponent here by bolting the Frogmite. Anyway, so the worst case scenario is my opponent trades with my Cabo, but in case they let the Frogmite die and try to regenerate the construct token, their construct token lives, but as a 3/3, so my Cabo lives. So that both of these scenarios would be very good for me, and trading was okay too. I just needed to get rid of this large construct giving me problems, and keeping their constructs in order. So my only option was try to raise them, somehow deal this 16 damage before they kill me with some crazy top decks. I was able to play some blockers, jumpers, hold some stubborn denials, but unfortunately they had Dot Monitor. I think this is a situation where most of the players would just probably concede the match and start a new one, but I was able to win this. One attack from a Nishoba. They were forced here now to trade with Patchwork Automaton, which was pretty good for me. And I didn't have much at this point, but I was able to kill the monitor to make their construct smaller, 5/5. So I have maybe two more turns available to me. I just played the Ragavan, and this was the deciding turn because my opponent didn't want to trade with their creatures. If they trade, their construct becomes smaller, so they don't have the kill anymore. So I get to live another turn. And they try to kill my Memnite, which I got from the top of their deck, and I double Stubborn Denial to let my Memnite jump the big construct next turn. So they play Urza Saga. It's not really important anymore. I was able to jump the construct. My opponent is on 4 life, and I top deck the Scion. I should have played the Scion maybe uh, before attack, but I kind of did it for this exact reason. Maybe my opponent will save mana to draw card from the Grow and not gain life with Gingerbrute. If they saw the Scion, they would definitely gain life with Gingerbrute. So that was the reason, and it paid off because my opponent didn't have a kill, no trample for their constructs, and they weren't able to deal with last 4 damage from Scion. So that's how I got the win against this very hard in this very hard game against Affinity. So in game 2 against Affinity, I think this matchup is a lot harder than the what is it called, the Hammertime matchup. But we still have a good game here, and you just have to deal with the most important spells from their deck. That is Urza Saga. Uh, Big creatures like Nettlecyst, stuff like that, their 4/4s are not that much of a problem because we play 2 mana 5/5 creatures. So we really only care about big Nettlecyst and Construct tokens. We have to deal with this Urza Saga, and these small creatures like Frogmite, Havarmite, Memnite, I just really don't care about this, so they're not important. But cranial plating is important. I have to have, always have to have removal for plating. They decide not to attack with plating here, but play their top monitors instead, which was a lot better option for me. And this way I was able to make them jump in one of their creatures, then play the Dromoka command, kill their Urza Saga, which is very good because it is a card that I really care about the most, and killing their Havarmite means I can play my Leyland Binding safely. I didn't want to waste my Leyland Binding here in this situation because I had a bolt, did a bolt before attacks. They let it resolve, didn't even use the welding jar. They play the edge champion, but edge champion is not good in this situation because I have the 2 leyland bindings actually, and without cranial plating, edge champion is like mm, very bad, not a good card. I had another territorial Kavu in hand, so I just didn't need it really, so I just went for the Kavu. Hold the binding, hold bolt to try to kill my opponent next turn. So as you can see, just if you deal with the right spells like cranial plating, like Urza Saga, construct tokens, um, stuff like that, this really becomes a very good matchup for me. Okay, so I got 2 loot from Kavu, find 2 burn spells, still have the binding in hand, and it just allowed me to seal the game immediately. They gain some life, but a lot of damage goes through. They live on 1 life, and I just finish them off with 2 bolts from the hand while still keeping the Leyland binding in hand in case they counter it or something. So that's it. That's it. Very good games against Affinity, especially first one was very hard to be able to win that one. Just you need to have faith in your top decks, and faith in this deck being able to deal 4 damage to finish things off. Okay, so starting match 3 in the second league. Starting first, this is game 1 against Tron, and stubborn decision to put Stuborn Denial obviously wasn't the greatest because my opponent was Tron. but still bolts and Ragavan worked out good too. I wanted to use this misstep here on Relic, not let them draw cards to find another card they need, just limit their draws because I had a very good clock. With Scion, they can't really kill two Scions in the same turn. Maybe they can, but it's really hard for them. And I played the final bolt and did final damage with my Scion. That was it. Tron is usually a very good matchup. For a Zoo, we really want to play against these kind of decks playing expensive non-creature spells, which can counter for 1 mana without Stubborn Denial. And my hand was pretty good here. Just needed 1 Stubborn Denial or something like that. I started with Ragavan, which is very good against Tron. Unfortunately, they had the Warping Veil to deal with it. So they played the Wormcoil, which is like okay. I was good for next turn if they don't do something OP in their turn, but they had the Cityscape Leveler. I don't know if this is common or not in the in sorry in Tron these days, but of course playing Vern Coin Engine than Cityscape Leveler was even bigger problem for me than playing Karn or something like that. So they when they went for second Worm Coil, I just conceded the match. That was it. So that was too much. Two Worm Coils and Cityscape Leveler, of course. It is too much for me. Okay, so a third match I've been playing first. It's a lot easier and no permission, but two Leyland bindings. Bolt can be very useful too. Just start with the Nacatl, turn 1, Kawu turn 2, pretty good. I think this beats playing Leyland Binding on their expedition map to prevent them from finding the Tron, because we really just want to get this damage through as fast as possible. Also getting loot from the Kawu is very useful, so I'll let them use their mana. Didn't want to, this is very important. If I was very convinced they have the Warping Veil in hand, so if I played the Tribal Flames on this turn, I think it wouldn't be good, because they would probably, I think they would Warping Veil my Tribal Flames. This way they played the Stone and the Haywire Might. Not being able to Stone on the same turn means I can just binding the Might and gets through with damage. Just deal 7 to them with the Bolt and Tribal Flames in hand, so that was easy game 3. Easy game 3 against my Tron opponent, and we can now watch match 4 in League 2, game 1. Okay, so very good run, obviously. My opponent started with Skrull. My opponent played, I think, Azorius Texas. Yeah. So I fetched before the Arbiter, of course. This is definitely the risk. Always when they have the Arbiter is the risk. I thought about playing the Cow, but I was safer just passing the turn. If they play Ghost Quarter or something, I can pay 2 mana, still find the basic. So that's why I did it, and they didn't have the Ghost Quarter, but my plan was still to Leyland Binding end of turn, get rid of the Skrull, and then kill the Leonin Arbiter in my turn, so they can mess with my mana. So I just wanted to get rid of this Arbiter as soon as possible before they draw some land destruction. Had multiple options here. I decided to play both of my creatures and think this was the best option. Then next turn, being able to play Kavu and hold the permission plus Leyline Binding seems like very good. They go for Deputy, but it's nothing special. I don't care too much about it. Still have Territorial Kavu plus for the next turn, plus hold the Stuborn plus Binding. It's a very good position for me. So I just play the Kavu, hold both of my spells, have a very good clock on the field. My opponent attacking just with spell set a Sprite. I go for the Binding on the Giver, so they can block and give protection. I go for 2 discard draw abilities, get rid of the Denial, get rid of the Ragavan. Didn't find anything very useful, but I was able to try to go for the Bolt they had. I should have maybe done it on their upkeep, but it was okay. I just played the Kavu, put myself on low life, but they kind of have 4 blockers. Maybe they can, so they can't try any counter attack. I really wanted to do this. Now, when you have 3 cow, I think this was very important. Going Giganta to hand before attack, so I have more options to discard with my cow abilities. If I just had 1 card in hand, I wouldn't be able to do this because I would probably discard. I would have to, if I draw the bolt, I will be forced to discard it with the next cow ability. So it would be pretty bad. It was really important to just do this right. Okay, so that's it. That was it. Game against Azorius Texas. It's usually a harder matchup for Zoo. Texas is favorable to win this because they're messing up with our lands pretty good. And I had a mediocre hand on match 2. I go for Savai Triumph, so no domain for me, no blue mana, but I was stuck on lands this entire game. I get rid of the Ethervial because they didn't play a land, so it seemed very important. But they were lucky enough to get their land on the following turn. So they played the Spirit. I just really needed the 3rd land at this point. If I got a 3rd land, I would be in. I think I would probably win this game too. I went with Nishoba. Should probably went for Ragavan Dash last turn. But I did it this turn, so I just wanted to use Ragavan as removal in this situation. At any point, if I just kind of had a 3rd land, I think I would be favored to win this, but didn't get it for a long time. So which means not being able to play the Scion, just play 1 spell per turn, except at this situation, where I was able to go Bolt and Nacatl. They had removal for my Nacatl, so being able to pressure me here. Really wanted this treasure token for next turn. If in case I draw a land, I have a few very good plays. They go for Deputy, and I still didn't get the land, so not much options here, and just remove their biggest attacker. But they go for another Deputy, and that was it in game 2. I conceded after that, and it was time to see the game 3. Okay, this was much better. I was able to turn 1 Ragavan. They don't have much answers for turn 1 Ragavan, just ending, I think. I connect with Ragavan. Uh, I think I didn't play this perfectly because for some reason I fetched Zagotrion before dealing damage for Ragavan, which was definitely not good. But as I said, Chain to the Rocks is not that great here because they play the Ghost Quarter, but I was able to deal a lot of damage before that being relevant. So I kind of also when you do one bad play, then a lot of not ideal plays come after that. Usually, I wanted another land at this point, so I just looted my Ragavan away. Wanted to draw another land to get me the red one I need to win the game. So at this point, I should have the best play I could have done would be to cast Tribal Flames before attack, and that way I will be able to use mana from Sacred Foundry before they use the Ghost Quarter, and I will get the 4 damage because they would probably kill it in response. So I would be able to finish my opponent on the same turn by fetching with heat and using the treasure token to finish off my opponent. So I kind of missed the lethal on that turn there, but I wanted to fetch here before Ethervile goes to 2 and they can maybe play Leonin Arbiter in response. So I just I cast Tribal Flames on my turn and that was it. Okay, that was the game. I didn't play this game very ideally, but I fortunately wasn't punished for it. So that's it. And last game for the trophy match in the second league, match 5, game 1, it was against a Titan opponent. It's much easier. Luckily, I played first in this matchup because I don't think I will be able to deal with this start when playing second. This way, I was able to play the Leyline Binding, start attacking, pressuring my opponent with Wild Nacatl. Wild Nacatl very good in this matchup, just very hard for my opponent to deal with it. And of course, I passed the turn with another binding. I was counting on them getting the amulet and then exiling a second amulet in response to the garden's ability. So this really slowed them down. They didn't have much after this. If you successfully uh, do this and kill Amulet in response to their Mikasent Garden's ability, I think you're in a really good position. Okay, so my opponent plays a lot of spells here, a lot of lands with Azusa, but it doesn't really matter. I have a 2-turn clock, and my opponent playing the Amulet as Titan next turn without Amulet just doesn't matter that much. So I count on them playing the Titan. So I have a lethal anyway. Don't really care about it. So I just play the Leyland Binding. On the end of turn, they concede the match. That was it. Okay, so as I said, I would probably lose this if I was playing on the draw, but on the play, it's much easier, of course, to deal with all these amulets and Mikasit Gardens. Leyline Binding, it's useful again in that situation. And now they again similar situation. They again had the gardens, but decided against copying the amulet, which was game deciding for me because I was able to kill the Leyline Binding before them copying, kill the amulet before them copying with twice with Mikosin Gardens. So pretty good for me. I didn't want to crack fetch in this position because if I don't crack it, I can either use it for Stuborn or Leyline Binding. It's really important you don't use it in this situation. So I was I depended on my leyline bindings in this game and my opponent not having Boseiju. They have the mana to cast the Titan next game, next turn, which means they'll be able to get the Primeval Titan next turn. I decided it's more important for me to hold the binding for next turn than Stubborn Denial. I think it was good because I have now have binding to deal with the Titan and then have the Stubborn Denial for turn after. And if I draw a burn spell, I can maybe finish them off. So that now they have to pay the ability ensure their Boseiju gets them another Primeval Titan, but it doesn't even matter because they don't have Amulet, so it's not important. I just Stubborn Denial their second pact. Without Dryad, their Titan ability doesn't mean a thing. So that was it. That was it. That was the last match and the trophy match against Amulet Titan. Was able to win both games against Amulet here, and that's it. So the list is working perfectly. I think 18-2 total score with this list talk for itself. Um, this is the final list. I won't be changing anything soon. Of course, if metagame changes, if metagame demands it, I will do the changes, do another video. But this is the list I'll be making my sideboard guide for. And this is in my opinion, the stock list that most of the players have tested so far, and I'm pretty happy with it. All the inclusions work very well. One-offs are great, minor missteps are great too. Very useful in a lot of matchups. We didn't play the games in these two leagues where minor misstep really shines, but it really helps with some traditionally hardest matchups like for Zoo, like Proves. It's very good there, and it's good against murktide. We didn't see that once too, but it really is a very important card in those matchups. It also helps against the burn, against a lot of other decks too. Just stops the removal like fatal push, sometimes prismatic ending on one, unholy heat, bolt, hammer, amulet. So a lot of these important one mana cards in these matchups that are really prevalent in the modern meta game. And that's it. That's the end of the video. A really long one with a lot of gameplay, a lot of matches. And you think you could see some very interesting matches, very useful gameplay patterns, and that's it. Okay, so that's it for this time. If you like the video, if you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe, and this is it for the next time. Sideboard guide will be in the video description and in the Reddit post I'll make probably tomorrow. So that is it for today. Goodbye.